Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Goff. Welcome to the lineup. Joined by Tabor Klingelsmith. We've got an array of topics to talk about this evening. Tabor, thanks for joining in today.
Yeah, super excited. Think there's going to be a lot of topics that are going to cause some conversation. So ready to dive into it.
Yeah, so we're going to get started off right off the one. This is a topic that's near and dear to you, and that's pitching overuse at the youth level. And what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's just baffling to me on the $3 ring, mindset that we're going to win. You know, we talk to our guys, specifically BY, right? Like we talk to them when we roll into a tournament that you need to find out who the dogs are, right? If you got to make it to the gold bracket or whatever, maybe you need to throw them. There's all types of variables, right? Um, But what I like to refer to is the little league, you know, what they kind of go about. And they essentially say, it's no different than high school. They basically are saying we need to start putting these kids on a pitch count. And after so many pitches, you need certain days of rest. And I'm a firm believer in that. And again, as a high school pitching coach, after 1 to 25, if they come in a closing row, yes, you can bring them back the next day. But when I see a kid go out there and he throws 3 or 4 innings, and you bring him back the next day to throw 3 or 4 innings, I just don't understand that thought process.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because this is an age-old topic that's been going on for years. And so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. What about, the kid that is, efficient in his pitch count or has one bad inning? Um, so I mean, do you think numbers is strictly the answer?
I do because there's been a study that they've came out with that it's not even necessarily about the pitch, right? We've talked all these years about, wow, they can't start throwing a curveball here because that shows significant damage in their arm, no matter what the age. But that's just not true. So it actually says right here, the relationship between age, type of pitch, and injury risk is complex, but there was no clear evidence that throwing breaking pitches at an early age was an injury risk factor. And the data showed the primary cause of arm injuries is specifically overuse, not the type of pitch.
That lines up with what I used to be taught from a good friend of mine, Jeff Zahn, who pitched in the California Angels organization for a long number of years. And I worked closely with Jeff hand in hand for a good number of years when I was running my program up in Michigan. And he stressed to me about the curveball. He says, Rick, I can tell you that if the curveball is thrown properly, is just as safe as a fastball. And I can also tell you that throwing 100 pitches fastballs incorrectly will do more damage than throwing 30 curveballs the right way.
Yeah, I mean, and I can get behind that. My biggest thing is, and I think you see this a lot, which luckily, at TBS we do have the outs. Something. I think there needs to be something even along the lines of that, right? Like you get so many outs per weekend, or you get so many. I used to coach youth league back in this was Jiminy Christmas 2014, and we had a rolling seven. So that pretty much
Hang
every
on, hang on. You say 2014 like that was ages ago.
it was ages ago for me. That was 9 years ago. I mean, this
Right.
is like my first coaching gig, and they're telling me that I can throw a kid 7 innings for every 2 games.
Right.
That is
Yeah, I remember that.
insane. That's insane. So you're telling me I can throw this kid 4 innings and then 3 innings, and then we got another game, he can go another seven. That's where I think we got to just learn to be an advocate for the kid. I'm not saying that there aren't certain kids that can do it because, again, I understand
There's
off
always
season training. Yes, there's always certain kids that their arm's fine. But what we're starting to see is that kid that did throw 7 innings every 2 days, his arm flushes out and he's needing Tommy John a lot earlier than anticipated.
well, hang on. I'm gonna stop you right there because that word is thrown around a lot nowadays, Tommy John. And some of it I feel is unnecessarily done. I mean, I'm hearing of parents having their kids or even some young adults. voluntarily doing Tommy John as a preemptive measure before it becomes a problem, and that's concerning to me. I don't know enough about that type of topic to speak intelligently about it, but just my head kind of tells me that something's not right about getting a surgery that you're doing it before you need it because you think you're going to need it.
Well, that's because anymore these parents are seeing that, oh, well, most of these kids that end up with Tommy John now, right? Like if they have it now, their arm ends up being stronger just because of the medical advances and all those
Right.
things. You know,
Sure.
back in the 80s, Tommy John would shut you down. I mean, that would probably be the end of your career. Whereas
Well,
now that's not the case.
you talked about the league that you were in give you seven innings for two games. I mean, at least it's something. I mean, they're trying to do something. I mean, the problem I have with the pitch count numbers, the problem I have with the pitch count numbers, to me, it would slow the game down. Now, listen, I'm not putting the pace of the game over the health of the child, but what we see in those pitch count number games, when somebody hits 25 pitches, they can't pitch the next day. So they can throw 25 pitches to one batter, or it can be three batters and there's one out. So you're making pitching changes in the middle of an inning. And so those people that are not in favor of the numbers, that's their argument, right? It slows the game down. And already, if you don't get to play your 6 innings or 7 innings, depending on your age, now you're talking about by the time you do all these pitching changes, it's going to make 3 or 4 inning games because of the time limits. I mean, I see, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not putting child's health above anything. I'm just telling you, what people are going to say, and dads and coaches are going to tell you, don't worry about my kid. I worry about my kid. I don't need you to be my parent. I hear that all the time at tournaments when people are talking about that. And you got to go back and think, Tabor. We did an interview with Mr. Michigan's baseball back in 1987, and we asked him about this topic about pitch counts. And he straight up said there was no such thing as pitch counts back in 1987. He got the ball. He was the dog. Again, he was Mr. Baseball in the state of Michigan, so evidently he was, fairly decent.
Right.
And it was the Nolan Ryan mentality and the, Satchel Paige mentality. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to pitch, and I'm not coming out till the game's over.
Yeah.
And I asked him if he had any arm problems when he played through summer league and through high school, and he didn't. He
Yeah.
didn't, and he threw 7 innings in high school all the time. Again, it goes back to everyone's built differently. I can tell you this: I had a kid that played for me on my travel team way back in 2014, way back, right? 2014 is way back. And this kid did everything right. His dad was strictly by the book. I mean, as far as his arm care goes, and how many pitches he threw and the type of pitches he threw, he was methodical. He was very stringent on what his son was going to do. And his son's a talented, talented pitcher who now pitches for the University of Dayton. But I'm going to tell you, all through his childhood, 11, 12, 13, he just had growth plate issues. He had arm issues. We constantly had to shut him down and not let him throw. And this went off and on for 2, 3, 4 years. And here was a kid that, according to the experts, did everything right.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'm not saying that those type of kids don't exist either, right? Which, there's going to be kids that do the right things, and there's other factors. But like, I just want to throw something at you. You mentioned 25 pitches. So for our state organization, high school, 1 to
Yeah.
25 is no mandated rest. So if you throw
Right.
25 pitches or less, no rest. 26 to 50, you got to sit out 1 calendar day. If you throw 51 to 75, that's 2 calendar days. 76 or more is 3 calendar days, and the most you can throw is 120. So where I'm going with this is, if we can have high school kids on this, why is it such a big deal for the youth? Now, I understand the pace of play. I understand all the things you're saying, but if you're going to switch the pitcher, just do it every inning. Don't go out there in the middle of an inning. That's my thought process. If you're wanting to mandate pitching and you're going to watch his pitch count, then sometimes you just got to let him go that inning. 25 pitches in an inning realistically, and you as a coach would say 12 to 15 pitches. is ideal, right?
Sure. Sure.
So, I mean, that's ideal, 12 to 15. So you're giving him an extra 10 on top of what's ideal to get out of the inning. Now, again, I understand in youth sports that's hard. Some kids are just having a rough day. We even deal with that in high school. But
Sure.
I just think, all right, if he does go the distance and he has to, if he goes over that 25, well, then ride him that game. I just think coaches miss the mark in terms of, hey, you know what? He's struggling already. He's probably going to be over 25 pitches. Let's just let him ride this game, and then we can't use him tomorrow. But that's not the process in my head. Most of these guys are thinking, oh, he threw 35. Well, he might have 45 tomorrow in the tank.
Yeah. That's a lot of thought process on pitching. With these coaches, I see it all the time. I hear about it all the time. With social media the way it is today, there's everybody out there wants to tell on everybody who they think is abusing pitchers and overthrowing pitchers. And, I got a problem with that. I mean, these people who think they know what the best situation is and they don't know the circumstances. And the biggest one is somebody just forgot to hit a button on Game Changer and change the picture. I mean, I can't tell you how many times the internet is blown up for some person who wants to be the social justice police and put everyone on blast. Like, look at this kid, he threw 117 pitches. When in reality he didn't. They just forgot to hit the button on Game Changer and move on. But
Yeah, well,
that's too late.
yeah, I was
Now,
just gonna say though, that's more pertaining to though of not doing your homework, right? You just see what you see, and instead of finding it out, we take that shortcut, and it's like, oh, well, it's what it says right here. Which, yeah, okay, but sometimes you gotta do a little digging.
well, that's not the way today's society is.
Yeah,
You know what?
gratification now.
We want to accuse you first, and if we're wrong, well, you know what? My bad. But they never
Oh,
apologize. They never come clean. And when people start talking about things they know nothing about, but they want to be internet famous for 2 minutes because they're making fun of someone, I got no use for those people. They can go pound rocks as far as I'm concerned.
well, that's because everyone has an opinion now, right? Like, let's just be honest. All the like, it's again, we've talked about it before, but we shouldn't even be talking about it now. But it's part of it is the burner account. People that don't even
Oh,
want to be traced. They just want to say what they want to say, and there's no repercussions.
repercussions, right? I
There
agree.
is there is none.
There is none. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to play devil's advocate to you, Tabor.
Okay.
And let's say in a perfect world, we go to this pitch count. Everybody's on board. A couple of things. One, who's going to track the pitches, right? Who tracks those pitches? Who agrees on that number? This coach says it's 25. This coach says it's 27. That's a problem. Number two, and the biggest one is, what do you know this kid's doing outside of the game, right? What if him and his buddies go back to the hotel and they go outside and they play wiffle ball in the parking lot and he is quote unquote the pitcher and he throws another 50 wiffle ball pitches or 100 wiffle ball pitches? Does that affect his arm?
I mean, well, one. Let's start with one. Um, I think it would have to be mandated through whatever organization you're playing with, right? Whether it be athletics or any other tournament provider. I think those were the people that are going to have to just say, "Hey, we're the ones coming up with it. This is our event. This is what we believe to be correct." And also, MLB just has the pitch smart, right? Like, if we really all wanted to go universal, MLB has the pitch smart, the amount of pitches, so we could go to that. But going into the second thing, of course that matters because you know more than I do, which granted, I just said, all these curveballs and all these different things don't matter. But when that kid goes and plays wiffle ball and he changes his arm angle 4 or 5 times and then he drops one down all the way to throw a slider with that blitz ball, of course that matters.
And no one knows about it.
Of course, and no one knows about it. But
No one
I
knows
know for
about it.
like our high school organization, you have to keep a game changer, and it syncs automatically with max preps, and so that's a way you can track it. It's very easy. It's very mainline streamed.
That doesn't track what he does in his off time when he gets with
Correct.
his buddy.
You're correct, and I do
You
agree
know,
with that.
And I've seen it happen. I've heard about it happening where, a kid, again, we're just going to make up a story here. Your thing of throwing 35 pitches today, he throws 45 pitches tomorrow and he gets hurt. And everybody's going, "See, I told you. He pitched 35 yesterday and 45 today and that's why he's hurt." Well, wait a minute. You didn't know about the 130 wiffle ball pitches he threw, in the parking lot. That might have had something to do with it, but nobody knows that, right? So everybody thinks they know the complete whole story. And, uh, there's no way. These are kids, and you tell them not to do it. Well, guess what? They're going to figure out a way, especially places like that have these week-long tournaments where kids are cooped up in hotels and they're bored. First
Yep.
thing they want to do, break out a wiffle ball game.
Yeah. All right. So then here you go. I just found something while we were talking. This is from the Little League World Series. You tell me if you would agree. So this is for people 14 and under. 1 to 20, 0 days. 21 to 35, 1.
Well, they're a little stricter.
They are a little strict, but I'm just using this as the all-encompassing, right? Like if we had to go to something, and then again, we can bounce ideas because really, I think this is a little much, but still, 21 to 35 is 1 day's rest, 36 to 50 is 2, 51 to 65 3, and then anything over 66 is 4. Now, a little strict for my liking, but how easy would it be to implement this?
Well, again, it's not about whether it's easy or not. When you're talking about summer tournaments, you're talking about um, being agreed upon.
Yep.
Are the summer tournaments going to hire someone? And I know PG hires someone to run the game changer, but how many times do you hear complaints about that? Oh, he didn't throw 25 pitches, and it goes back. I hear about arguments all the time. There's never going to be a perfect solution. I applaud the people that put any type of measurements in place to help. And it's sad that they have to, right? They shouldn't have to. This should be controlled by the coaches. It should be controlled by the parents. And, KHSAA or MHSAA or any of the high school organizations shouldn't even have to get involved. But there's probably, I don't know, I'll just throw out a number, 5% of the idiots out there that these rules are in place for. They're not in place for the responsible coaches, and they're not in place for the responsible high school people. They're in place for the idiots. Let's just get that out there.
Correct. And I completely agree with that. This is not for the coach that takes arm care serious or takes the pitch count serious. Or really, my motto has been since I've started coaching, I'm not in the business of hurting anyone's arm. So if your arm starts feeling tender or tight, just let me know. It doesn't matter if it's 15 pitches or if it's 50 pitches, you know? So I think, and I'm with you. Yes, this is for the ones that are chasing those $3 rings. And that
Yeah,
means more to them than any kid's arm.
every year at my TBS coaches meeting, I lay out the pitch restrictions for the TBS Nationals, and we do go by outs. And most of the coaches kind of laugh at me and they said, "Listen, our personal pitching restrictions are more stringent than that. And that's what we go by." And I get that
Right.
from the majority of coaches at the TBS Nationals, that looking, we appreciate you putting something in, but we have our own, which is more stringent than what you have. And,
Which is
but
okay.
but hang on. These high level travel teams, they usually go 7, 8, 9 pitchers deep. Your double A and your triple A teams don't. And that's what separates the difference. People ask me all the time, what's the difference between a double A team and a triple A team and a major team? And it's their pitching depth, right? The number 9 pitcher on a high level travel team would go to a double A and probably be the number 1 pitcher, and so those guys don't have that many of them, right? They only go 3 pitchers deep, and then that's why they bring these kids back like they do, which, hey, if you're a coach, develop. Let those other kids take the mound. Whether you win or lose, let those 7, 8, 9, 10 depth players take the mound and just live with the results. But that's not what happens at those levels, at double A and
Yeah,
triple A.
but that's because those double A coaches aren't thinking ahead. You know what? Honestly, in most of those double A tournaments, and I could be wrong, But the ones that I have seen, and this is just local, everyone makes it to Sunday. So who cares what seed you are because you got your dogs on Sunday?
But I think the majority of those double A coaches, and I'm not saying ignorance is an excuse, but I just don't think they know any better.
Then
I don't
maybe
think they
we
know
need
any
to
better.
start having a global youth league slash double A single A coaches meeting to talk about it. There's plenty of information out there, and I don't want to just bash these guys because like I know they give their time, they give their effort, they're
Yeah,
doing these
they
things
do.
to help the kids. So like I'm not bashing them in terms of like I I tip my hat to you. But there is too much information. There's way too many. You can Google anything you want. You can YouTube anything you
You're
want.
right. You're
There's
right.
information out there if you're willing to learn.
You're gonna want to learn, right? But you'd be surprised how many of those coaches think they already know. They already know. And listen, I've coached high level travel teams. I've umpired. I've umpired at every level imaginable except pro ball. I've done college, but I've not done pro ball. And I can tell you that a lot of my conversations and disputes in games is because coaches don't know the rules. And I'm sure it's an obscure rule, but they try to tell you, well, that's not the rule. Well, it actually is the rule. So a lot of these guys don't know what they don't know. And that
Yeah,
goes
I
back to
mean,
the coaching aspect of it.
but again, I don't feel bad anymore these days. Yeah, you know what? I'm sure 20 years ago before the internet took the turn it did. Yes, I got it. You don't know what you don't know, and you have to have a good network, and you have to have this to get that information. But
Yeah.
anymore, that's not the case. I googled pitching youth overuse, and there came up 30 articles.
Well, it's because that's something that you care about. Again, that double A coach, he thinks he's doing it the right way. He don't know any different. He thinks he's doing it right way because maybe his neighbor coached 10 years ago and told him that's the way to do it. So now that's the way he's going to do it because his neighbor told him that 10 years ago. So he don't think he's doing it wrong.
Yeah, but all right, and this is back to the what if someone told him he was wrong and then he still didn't care?
I don't think it would be that he didn't care. I think it would be more that he don't believe them because he was told by his neighbor who he entrusts fully. Maybe the neighbor's kid went on and played college baseball. So this guy thinks the neighbor knows what he's talking about. So when somebody tries to tell him, and listen, I'm going to tell you, back in my early days of coaching, I had an incident like that. I can't remember the specifics, but I do remember that somebody told me a certain way to do something. I did it for maybe a year or two, and then somebody new come along and said, "Hey, Rick, you're not doing that exactly right. Let me show you the right way." And I'm like, "Man, get out of here. You know what you're talking about." Come to find out, he was actually right. And that from that day forward, I've always kept my mind open when it comes to coaching techniques, coaching philosophies, coaching principles. Even if they're bad and different, always listen to them because maybe you just get that little smidge that might work.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I think we can take away anything from everything. I went and watched a game on Friday, and I'm sure we're going to move on to the next topic after this. But, I went and watched the game Friday. Would I consider it was a great game? No, but I learned some things. And I was like, oh, okay, man, maybe that's different. Maybe I should, bounce my head around that, see what goes on.
yeah, I don't, and you're right. And I'm gonna give you a case in point. I was watching the NCAA basketball tournament this weekend, yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I don't remember which game it was, but um, one team late in the game, they were up. They put all five players on the end line to inbound the pass. First time I'd ever seen anything like that. All five players were out of bounds because after a made bucket, you can run the baseline, you can throw it
Yep,
to another player, and the defense was confused because they didn't know how to defend this, right?
correct.
I guarantee you're going to see more of that starting next year. People are going to
Mhm.
say, "Oh, you know what? We just learned something. We're going to do that." And I
Yep.
think that's what needs to happen in baseball as well as too. And I think it does happen a lot. It happens a lot. Because I mean, somewhere, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but somebody somewhere had to create the shift for the first time, and then look what it blew up to, right?
Man, that shift is yeah, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. Let's move on to the next topic. And this kind of goes in hand with our first topic. And this is your player a pitcher slash catcher? Again, this is probably more in line with a double A team, a triple A team than it is a major team. But is your player a pitcher slash catcher? And this probably gets to me more than the pitch count thing.
Mhm.
Kids who catch and pitch. And listen, I get it. You know, at the youth level, you have 10, 11 players on your team. You don't want to carry a roster of 15, especially at the 9, 10, 11-year-old age group because you want everybody to play. But you see pitchers and catchers being the same person, sometimes even in the same day. And man, that just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, I think we're gonna agree here because, I'm not in the business of hurting people's arm, and as a coach myself, if I know that kid's gonna pitch that day, let's just use a Saturday opening day. If I know he's gonna pitch that second game, there's no reason for him to catch the first. I'm putting double the amount of pitches on his arm for no reason. And back to that, carrying a roster, you should be able to find two catchers. One can be your primary, and the second guy just has to be good enough to catch the catcher when he catches. But no, I should never see, in my opinion, I should never see a catcher catch two games on a Sunday, make it to the championship game, and then he throw it.
Oh yeah, that's the big one. The big one for me is the catcher that goes to the. I'm sorry. The biggest one for me is the pitcher that goes to the catcher, and he just threw 75 pitches on the mound, and the coach tells him put the gear on. It just makes me cringe. Um, but it's not my team, and they do it all. I even see that at the high level majors. We talk about double A, triple A. I've seen it a few times happen at the high level major teams.
And it's still
And
baffling. It doesn't matter what level it is, it's baffling.
it is, but after the game, I would go up to the coach and listen. I'm not going to try to tell him how to coach, right? I go up to him and I go, hey, I noticed you put Timmy in to catch after he pitched. What made you do that? I mean, again, I try to put it under the aspect of I'm trying to learn something, right?
Hmm.
And he tells me, he goes, well, I don't have another catcher. Well, who was the kid that was just catching? And then he answers me, and I wasn't paying attention. He goes, oh, well, that kid had to go to the mound. So basically, all they did was flip flop the pitcher and catcher. So let me tell you guys that pitching is just as stringent as being a pitcher catcher. Both of them are tough positions. They're both throwing the ball multiple times.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I just I don't know. I just think, especially at that high level, major, even AAA, like you got two guys that can catch. Yes, there might be one that he's the dude, but you got two guys. I just personally don't understand. As a catcher myself, my senior year, I got shut down from pitching because they was like, look, man, you're more valuable behind the plate, whatever that looks like, And so there was never a time that I knew I was going to have to go pitch because I knew I was catching, and I knew that's not how my high school coach was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, once you get to that level, you don't see it as much. But I used to umpire high school a lot, and I
Uh-huh.
did see it at the high school level. I saw you get to these smaller high schools, right?
Mhm.
They've only got 10 players. They don't have the large rosters as the top level high school kids or the largest high schools, I guess. Excuse me. These little small high schools who might have a total enrollment of 57 kids, right? I mean, it's not a lot.
Right.
And I've umpired some of those games, and I saw those coaches take the kid from behind the mound, and from behind the plate, and he goes to the mound. And so it does happen in high school. And don't think it's just a youth level problem. I mean, it happens across the board. And again, I think it's either they don't care or they don't know. I'm hoping it's they don't know and not that they don't care. Because if they don't care, they shouldn't be coaching.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that, and this is to everyone out there. If you have a coach that he does not communicate or, talk about that it's your athlete first, his health, his, well-being, all those things, in my opinion, you're playing for the wrong guy because you want someone that, yes, you want someone that's going to push him to the, to his potential. You want all of those things. But at what point does the safety of his arm come first?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? I mean, again, we talked about it with the pitching overuse at the youth level. You can do everything right. You can do everything by the book. You can cross the T's and dot the I's, and injuries still occur, and that's just part of the game. It happens. I'm sure. Um, you know, major league pitchers, it happens to all the time. Nobody expects to get hurt. They think
Correct.
they're invincible. And for years, right? For years, especially if you go to high school level, you might have went through your whole youth career, never had an issue, never had an issue. You get to high school, and now all of a sudden, there's all kinds of issues. Why? Your body grows differently, your muscles grow differently, they stretch differently, and lo and behold, now all of a sudden you're injury prone. And it's by no fault of your own. It's human genetics, right? It's just what happens with your body as you get older.
Yeah, but that's controlling the controllables, right? Having an arm care routine in place, whether that be the bands or weights or whatever you got, hitting the weight room in the off season is crucial. And I think a lot of athletes miss the mark there is, you got to be in the weight room. You got to get those muscles strong. And honestly, baseball misses the mark, in my opinion, because they do all this off season training and they get bigger, stronger, faster, but then they fall off whenever the season starts. So then muscles are just slowly weakening as the season goes. Whereas I believe in a maintenance lift, once a week.
I've talked to people who don't believe in it. I mean,
Of course.
I mean, yeah, it just goes, goes both ways, and everybody thinks their way is the right way, um, and who am I to tell them that it's wrong or right or indifferent? But that's what this show's about. We give our opinions, which is, let's face it, it's exactly what they are, as opinions.
Right.
But talking about catchers, let's get on to the next one. You're a catcher yourself.
Yep.
What age can catchers start calling their own game? And what do coaches look for when they allow a catcher to call his own game?
I This is a tough one for me. Being around BY Elite, I've coached nines all the way to uh, you know, 15U, and clearly I'm a high school coach, but I mean, I think that depends on your kid, right? I mean, at 9 years old, I can tell you this right now, it's fastballs and changeups only. So I don't care who calls the game at that point. It's fastball changeup only. 10 years old, you start mixing in that curveball. I would say I want to be more hands on with that from 10 to 12. My opinion is 13. I think they're more than capable if they have the high IQ and they've been around the game, right? Like if they've been a catcher from 9 to 13, I think 13's a good number that they can start calling their own game.
Yeah, again, my philosophy is a little bit different. When I was coaching, I didn't implement the curveball until they were 12 in a game situation. Now, we taught them how to throw it at 11 in practices, but we didn't use them in games until they were 12. And my rule was, you can get up to, 5 in an inning, when I called the pitches, and don't come back and tell me, oh, that one slipped, that one didn't count. Nope, that still goes to the old chart, and it was a curveball, just wasn't a very good one. Um, but as far as the catchers go, I really stressed to my catchers, even when they were 10, 11 years old, when I was calling the game for them, I stressed to them, don't just be a robot, right? Take my signals and um, relay it to the pitcher. When I give you a pitch, think about why I'm telling you to call that pitch, right? So, and then when my catchers come back in, I would quiz them. Hey, you know what? That 2-2 fastball that we went away with, why do you think we went away with it? 10, 11 years old, they probably just do this, right? They shrug their shoulders and they go, like, I don't know. I just called it. It's what you told me to call. So I always stress to my catchers, think the game, and as they got older, and it's funny you say that because 13 is kind of my age too on when kids can do that. Um, I let my catchers disagree with me.
Yeah.
And bottom line is they're right there in the batter, right? What I can't see from the dugout as a coach, I can't see if the kid's up in the box. Well, I can see if he's up or back in the box, but I can't see if he's in or out, right? I can't see if he's on top of the plate or if he's off the plate. So I always told my catcher to pay attention to those types of things.
Yeah.
And, then I would let my catcher, call a game. And, we give up 5 runs in the first inning. He comes back in and we talk about it. So I think 13 is probably a good age to let these catchers do their own thing.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, at that point, like I said, if they've been playing for the last 4 years, they've been behind the dish. And I think the biggest thing, I didn't talk about was that they understand your philosophy, no matter what that is.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
big work off the fastball. We'll break it off when we have to, but other than that, we want to miss very efficiently, right? Like if I call that low outside pitch for 0-2, I want to miss. I want to miss barely. I want them swinging. I want them chasing. And so the catcher needs to understand your specific philosophy to call the game.
Yeah, and to understand that, he will develop his own philosophy as he
Correct.
gets older. A couple of my former it's ironic, a couple of my former catchers are now coaches. They're coaching in high school and one's coaching a college club team. So they have a desire and an ambition to become coaches. And I've said it all along. I mean, the best managers, coaches, whatever you want to call them, are former catchers.
Yeah.
They see the game differently.
I as a catcher myself and as a coach now, of course, I'm biased to that. But I agree. I played at one of those small schools, high school and college. So I was blessed with being able to, see everything. I got to hear the outfielders being coached. I got to hear all the pitching, that was being taught in the bullpens. As I'm catching for my coach in high school and college, got to learn a little bit about the infield. So if you're a catcher out there and you do think someday you could have, desires, because let's be honest, catchers have the most downtime in practice. There's not a whole ton of stuff. You might do your individual defense, but even then, you're catching for us on the infield. You're going to catch bullpens. There's just so much you can learn that will advance you in your coaching career.
Well, and on top of that, you talked about the catchers have to know what your mentality is or your thought process is, and kind of feed off of that. But I take it a step further. Not only does he have to know the coach's mindset and his game plan, but he's got to know his pitcher. He's got to know not just one, just two. He's got to know 4 or 5 kids that are going to go out there and throw. And one pitcher, everyone's different, right? Not everyone's best pitch is a fastball. It could be a
Yep.
changeup. It could be the slider. It could be the curveball. You have to know as a catcher what is this guy's out pitch when we need an out. What is
Yeah.
his pitch when we need a ground ball? So there's a lot into that process and the thought process, and I think that's why they make good managers because they grow up managing pitchers, and then they end up growing up managing the game, which it becomes easier for them and more natural.
Yeah, and honestly, too, you're going back to the five guys. That's five different personalities. He's got to learn how to calm down.
Yeah, and
That's
he has to
five
have the
different guys.
respect.
Yeah, that's five different guys. He's got to learn how to talk off that ledge and calm them down. Maybe three of them you got to make laugh. Maybe the other two you got to just light a fire under their butt. So definitely the catcher, calling his own game is going to come with time and maturity. But the more they
Some
catch, the
improvement.
more they're
Some
around, going to
improvement.
be okay.
Yeah, and he's gotta be willing to fail too, right? I mean,
Of
because
course.
listen, let's face it, every catcher who calls a game is gonna fail at some point, and more than once, is gonna fail, calling the wrong pitch. I mean, look at that guy in the World Baseball Classic, to Trey Turner, an 0-2 pitch for a grand slam home run. How does that happen?
you know, ah, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I mean, I just think a lot of times as a pitching coach, you overthink. And so you're trying to play chess. And meanwhile, that hitter at the plate is just sitting on whatever you think you're about to blow by him.
Well, it just goes to show you that it happens at all age levels, right? All skill levels too, it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to last week, we played the number 9 team and I for sure thought this was a 1-2 count. I was going curveball away and I was like, this kid ain't going to be ready for this. Yeah, well, he sent a 3-run home run shot over the fence. And you're exactly right. It happens at all levels. We all overthink, and especially when it comes to pitch calling, I think there's a lot of overthinking going on. And again, all levels, 9U to college to pros, like those guys, like we're overthinkers, right?
The one that kills me, and we'll get on to our last topic, is I see it at the youth level all the time. I'll use 12-year-olds, for example, because that's my favorite age group. You got a kid on the mound throwing 77, 78 miles an hour, and he just blows 2 fastballs by the hitter that's not even close. And I sit there and I watch the game and I'm thinking, throw him a fastball again.
Yeah.
But I bet you 75% of the time they try to throw a curveball because they're trying to get too cute. They speed up the batter's bat. All of a sudden he gets a base hit. And the coach just kind of shakes his head like, well, you threw the curveball over the plate. It was supposed to be in the dirt. And I'm thinking to myself, no, he didn't even have a clue on the 2 fastballs. Why didn't you throw him a third fastball? But
Exactly.
everybody's philosophy is different.
Yeah.
Well, the last one here, I'm sure some people have some questions about high energy equals problems. And, explain to us, what that's about.
Man, I think that when we get in
Yes,
these situations,
I will
go
say
ahead.
this, when we talked about this topic, I was a little confused on what it was, but when you explained it to me, I completely understood, and I've seen it 1,000 times. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's just, I'll revert back to one of our events. It was a team event I was at, and this was in Florida. And I'll never forget this team was from Cuba, and they were playing a team from West Virginia. And their style of baseball is just high energy, right? Like they're gonna talk, they're gonna chatter, they're gonna make noise. And I just seen that unfolding, and you seen the other team getting very frustrated, very mad. And of course, why? Because their team was not loud. They were not in tune to the game. And so
And they were probably losing.
and they were losing. So you see that high energy in situations, especially whenever they're losing. It just causes so much problems. Oh, you're Bush League, you're this, you're that. And then
Yeah.
the coaches are going at it. And then the players are like, oh, you want to go at our coach? Cool. Well, we'll go at you. And it just becomes this downward spiral if the umpire is not in charge of that field. So high energy. I mean, even with BY, man, like we've seen it time and time again. It'll be an 8-2 game, and we're bringing energy, and then we make a run at their lead, and they're like, oh, they're doing this. This is wrong. I cannot believe that you're allowing them to talk. And it's like they're kids, and the game is finally fun, and we're bringing energy, and you know, it really bothers me that it bothers other people when it comes to this topic.
Well, those people are baseball purists, right? That's kind of the way I view them as they're baseball purists. They think the game should be played a certain way. But you start talking about the teams from the Dominican and from Cuba and all that, they're purists too, and that's the way they play their game. So when you get two contracting styles in the same game, it's going to create a problem, right? It's like oil and water.
Every
And
time.
it's as a tournament director, you have to be aware of those games and when they happen because you want to try to be there to kind of squash the situation that is inevitably going to arise. And you have to make both sides understand to respect each other's sides. Um,
Yeah. Neither.
the
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think back to Panama and like how I had a 14U team, and a lot of those kids will be in your TBS event, but like that's how they play. They play high energy. They play talking trash. And I look back to Tennessee last year. They were the bad boys of baseball. Why? Because of the high energy and the things they were doing. Now, a lot of the things they did were wrong. I don't believe in flipping people off, none of that jazz. But I think there is a right way to bring energy that it shouldn't cause problems.
Well, And I think that's where the problems come in, Tabor, is the high energy gives you that false sense of, well, I can do this. Insert flipping somebody off at Tennessee, right? Hey, listen, our energy is so high, I can get away with anything. And you have to, there's a fine line. There's a fine line. You know, I can tell you Felix Hernandez, King Felix, had a team in TBS Nationals last year. And when they won a game, they did this dance after the game. And the opposing team took it as they were rubbing it in their face that they had just beat them. And it
Yep.
wasn't the case. They did this dance whether they won or lost. It was just their routine that they did.
Yep.
Um, just because you chose to stay behind and watch this and took it as being personal, well, that's on you. It wasn't nothing personal, but again, there goes back to people who are trying to make an issue out of something they don't even know.
Correct.
Um, but Felix's team had a lot of energy, and sometimes people are just not used to that. And
Yeah.
it's not saying that it's right or wrong, but there's a fine line. You have to make sure that you don't cross that line with that energy. Be respectful. You can make noise, you can cheer, you can do all that, but when you start talking across the aisle directly at someone, then that's when the energy needs to kind of tone down a little bit. Look,
Agreed.
have all the energy you want for your own team. Don't take it across the aisle.
Yeah, and honestly, you bringing up dancing, that kind of struck something in me to think about. Um, you know, the biggest thing, or excuse me, sorry, let me backtrack. So we had Lathan there, the kid umpire, and we're playing an 8 o'clock game in Panama, and the game was running a little behind. We're waiting on umpires, and so one of the parents turned on the cha cha slide. So what does my kids do? They start the cha cha slide, and they were having fun. And like you said, the opposing parents took that as, oh, they're rubbing it in. They're about to try to beat us. Well, then the other team won, and the parents, starting in turn, turned on the song and started doing the cha cha slide and yelling at our athletes.
I have no problem with the other team turning on the cha-cha slide,
Me
0,
neither.
but I have a problem with them yelling at the athletes, right? If you want to make it about, ha ha, see, we got you back. I mean, that's fine. As long personal, right? I guess just don't make it personal. If you make it personal,
Correct.
then I've got an issue.
And I agree with that. That's where I guess that I was going with that is that too many of these people take everything personally.
Yeah,
Everything is a
unfortunately, that's the way
personal
today's
attack.
society is, man. It's personal. Everybody takes everything personal. Yeah, comedians can't even be comedians anymore because everybody takes it personal.
Yes, you're 100. I just watched a comedy and the and the guy said that he's like, when did being a comedian become the worst job in the world?
Right. There's no way I could be a comedian today. I mean, it's just those guys get beat down. It's well, I don't want to get off on a
Yeah,
tangent
but
here,
I
but
mean, long story short, when it comes to the energy, I recommend everyone to not take it personal. Let the kids play the game how they want to play, and the game's going to shake out how it needs to shake out. If your team wins, cool. If they win, cool. At the end of the day, it's a freaking game. It is a game.
well, I wish more people had that that mentality, but unfortunately they don't. I've seen it way too often. All it takes is one parent to feel like their child has been slighted in some way, shape, or form, and all hell's going to break loose, right? And um, it normally comes from moms and that mama bear mentality that they're going to protect their cub. And if they feel their cub is being embarrassed or slighted in any way, shape, or form, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly fast.
Well, they need to
And
call my mom then because my mom let me fail and let me get bashed because I had to handle it. I had to learn how to deal with that.
you did. But Tabor, I'm telling you, that's not the way society is anymore. You might get that outlying parent that has that attitude, but not today's world, brother. It just doesn't happen. So, um, you know, I, I think a lot of times, a lot of these parents need to grow up personally. A lot of the
Of
parents
course.
need to grow.
Yes, I
They're
mean, but
more of a problem. The parents are more problems at my events than the kids are.
oh, every time. It's always the parents. And if you talk to the kid, he's gonna be like, I didn't see nothing wrong with that. Or I wish my
Right.
team does that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, great episode. Man, we got over a lot of topics today. Got some real good information out there to everyone. I hope they thoroughly enjoyed it. We will be back the same time next week with a few more new topics to talk about. I hope you enjoyed it. Tabor, I had fun. Thanks for joining in today. And I'm Rick Goff. This is the lineup, and we will see you next week.